When was the last time you took a leap of faith, trusting that everything is going to work out? Do you crave growth, or are you merely content with the status quo? If you want more out of your life, out of your career, and out of your relationships, you are in the right place. Take the leap and discover how to create a life by design rather than living it by default. Real success starts with you. Now here's your host, Colleen Biggs.
All right. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap. I am your host, Colleen Biggs, and I'm so proud of this podcast. I've heard so many people say, I don't want to start a podcast because there's so many podcasts out there. And that's like saying, I don't want to write a book because there's so many books out there. That never stopped an author. So if you have an idea and you have a passion and you have information that you want to share, a podcast is one of the best ways that you can do that. I believe visibility first in a business. If you're not telling everybody about you, they don't know you exist. It's why we created the Leap community. It's why I work with individuals on creating visibility. Trust me when I say, after I've worked with 360 some businesses, visibility is the number one thing you have to do. And then after that, you really need to be building long-lasting relationships with those individuals that you are working with, that are clients. And that means appreciating them. That means having touch points with them when you're reaching out to them. So that's just a little tip for you today. Remember, you get to design your life the way that you want your life to be designed. So today, I'm excited to have Dan Capello here. He has an amazing story. So he's an executive chef, and you're like, wait, first of all, you have a guy on your episode. That's weird. Second of all, you've got an executive chef. What are we doing here, Colleen? Are we talking about food? Well, we all know I love food, but we're not talking about food today. We're talking about avoiding burnout and how to serve yourself first. And you're like, yeah, I met a lady yesterday at a networking event, and she said, yeah, I'm not into any of that woo-woo stuff. I'm really just all about, finance and conferences. And I said, yeah, I was you once. And then I got completely burnt out. And then now I said, I don't know, but the way I run my business now and stepping back and designing it the way I want it and allowing it to really flow a lot easier, knowing God has a plan for me out there. For me, this has been instrumental in running my business. So we're going to talk to Dan today on how do you avoid burnout by serving yourself first? Because a lot of you might think, yeah, I don't have time to serve myself first, so we put ourselves last. Well, we're going to talk about why that's a huge pitfall and all the problems with that. But before we do, I want to get to our sponsor of today's show, Paige Morlino Sells. Choose excellence in real estate with Paige Morlino, a seasoned 7-year realtor at Realty One, grounded in core values of honesty, transparent communication, meticulous detail, and unwavering commitment. She brings true value to every home journey. As a full-time and full-service agent with a vast network, Paige leverages diverse avenues and masterful marketing, ensuring each property and client receives the attention they deserve for a successful and rewarding real estate experience. Elevate your real estate venture with Paige today. And we have a link here for you to automatically instantly check your estimated home's value. And if you don't live in Arizona, that is okay, because she has connections all across the United States and can get you connected quick and easy to a trustworthy real estate agent. I think that's the important thing, right? Trustworthy real estate agents. I don't want to work with someone skeevy out there, and I'm sure you don't want to either. We've all had our share. I'm just saying, might be your neighbor, maybe not. I'm not sure. Okay, let's get to Dan, because when I met Dan, I immediately asked him if he would come on the podcast because I wanted to share more of his story because it was so inspiring. He's an award-winning executive chef. Dan gave his all in the kitchen, but was sacrificing his health and his home life. And I think maybe some of you have seen this even on like reality TV. Dan hit 300 pounds and he physically didn't recognize himself. When he lost over 70 pounds in 10 months, he realized it wasn't the number on the scale that was hurting him. It was the thoughts running through his head. How many of you can relate with that? Dan identified 6 key questions that he must answer to get peace, gain clarity, and create a life he was proud of. I love that word proud, Dan. That's wonderful. Today, Dan helps other chefs and leaders recover from burnout and discover that whether it is serving dinner to hundreds or serving your family of four, you must start with serving yourself. And he does have a book that is brand new called Deliberate Evolution. And we're going to be talking about that book, why he wrote the book, and what's included in the book in just a few minutes. But Dan, let's welcome you to the show first. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
So good today. It's a happy Wednesday.
Yes.
Wednesdays are the days we record podcasts around here, y'all. So that's why I'm talking about it being on a Wednesday. So Dan, executive chef, where were you working? Tell us all about your work back in the day.
I worked at high-end country clubs throughout the South here. I started at one of the country clubs, was one of my first professional jobs as a culinarian, and I just worked my way up, and that's what I wanted to be, was an executive chef at a high-end country club, and I actually did that. So
That's
that
a
was one of the
lot of
goals.
pressure, right? We've all seen it on TV, and I don't know, Gordon Ramsay, you know, the whole deal. He's a little over the top. It's kind of his brand. But I've also talked with some other executive chefs, and it's like a pressure cooker type environment. Do you feel that way with where you worked? Did it feel like it was just a pressure cooker environment?
Oh yeah, it always is. And you see those shows and they're all like, they're in one little kitchen. But when you're like at a country club, I mean, I had two restaurants. Two kitchens, two separate kitchens, three restaurants out of one kitchen, and then another kitchen that did the pool and another restaurant. And then we had banquet facilities and we had encores. And then you have all these things going with a la carte. You got breakfast, lunch, dinner, parties, all this going at one time. And it's planning it, ordering it, and get everybody to, I mean, it's a whole, it's a team. It takes a team, and it's hard to get everything going and not keep you up at night, because you're always thinking about, did I order that, or did this get done, or is that person take care, or is somebody going to show up? But it's a lot of stress, and that's where you get your coping mechanisms, and one of them was food and alcohol. So I mean, that's where I ended up at 300 pounds, and we don't ever see us creeping up on that. It's just all of a sudden we just I looked at a picture from my best friend's wedding in 2018, and I was like, oh my God, who is that? And it's like, that's me. I'm like, oh my God. And we don't see that happening. We don't see, working myself up to, a bottle or more of wine a night, every night. And you don't see these things creeping up on you. And when they catch you, they overtake you, and it's hard to come out of that.
Yeah, they do. My husband had a similar story. He looked at a photo and asked his kids, who was that? And they're like, yeah, Dad, that's you. And he's like, yeah, that guy doesn't have any hair. They're like, you don't have any hair. So he started buzzing it right then. He didn't even realize that he was bald. And the kids were like, oh, don't you look in the mirror? What are you talking about here? And I think that's the thing. I've had so many women tell me that it just kind of creeped up on them, especially like over COVID. And then they just created these patterns and habits. Now, stress is going to increase your cortisol. So when you have stress and your cortisol increases, you're going to pack on pounds much faster. Even though you're physically active, and probably I would imagine in a kitchen like that, you're doing over 16, 17,000 steps a day, right? And for someone who's taking care of themselves, that's a great daily regimen. But for someone who is high in stress, this is that avoiding burnout piece. You can't combat that weight if you've got your cortisol so high, because it just keeps releasing and you just keep storing. So what changed? Like when you looked in the mirror and you looked at that photo of yourself at the wedding, and you didn't recognize yourself, what did you do?
Well, when I saw that, it's like you see those things and then you're in disbelief. And that's the one thing, like they say, it only takes one day to change your life. But sometimes it takes 20 years, or it takes 6 months or whatever to get to that day. And that's what it was. And then it was New Year's Eve, and I had gotten the book David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. And he had a similar issue. He was like almost 300 pounds. and he wanted to become a Navy SEAL. And so I was reading that, and I was like, you know what? I want to run a Spartan race. So here I am, New Year's Eve, whatever. It's like, I want to run a Spartan race. It's like, I'm 300 pounds. It's like, you don't run a Spartan race at 300 pounds. Who does that? And then I heard David Goggins in my head. He's like, I do.
Such a great book, wasn't that? Every book was great. Yeah. So, okay, tell me about that. Did you sign up for the Spartan race?
So I didn't. I signed up for the Spartan race in February, but I got out there and in January, and I just started walking every morning. And before work, I would get up at 5 a.m. and start walking. Um, that was the start. It was that first day getting out there. I mean, the hardest thing, the heaviest weight you ever lift is that door leaving to go outside and exercise or walk or whatever.
That's it. They say as soon as you take the first step, as soon as you put on the clothes and start stretching, or that's the hardest first step is to start.
Right. And we all suffer from this. It's like, it's so hard to get started, but then once you start, you're like, well, I'm here. I might as well, walk to the end of the driveway. Then you end up walking. So I started doing that, and I got my kids involved with it and getting them up in the morning. And that lasted about 2 weeks. And then they were like, they're not waking up.
Forget it, Dad.
Yeah. So, but I kept doing it, and I had knee surgery probably 15 years earlier. So my knee started acting up. And so I went to the orthopedist, and he's, because I had to ice it and couldn't walk on it very much, but I kept doing it. And he's like, you can't do this. And so you got the orthopedist telling you can't do it. So I was like, fine. He goes, you're fine. You got arthritis. It's from the ACL replacement, the damage, and you'll be okay. You just need to ice it down and take it easy. So I just kept going and going. And then I had to go back and see him again. And he's like, you're fine. You're fine. You're just an idiot.
You know what? Go ahead, Dan.
No, but I mean, it's like that drive had already got that momentum in my head. Yeah. It's because, it's that first 5 pounds you lose. Mm-hmm. When you lose that first 5, you're like, wow, I can do this. It's the first time that scale's moved in so long. I actually got on the scale and it moved. Mm-hmm. And you're like, what if, that whole thing, what if I could do this? What if I could pull it off? And I could vision myself jumping, because I watched some of the videos, and they jump over a fire at the finish line. So I envisioned myself jumping over the fire, and I could smell it, and I could feel the heat because jumping over the hot coals. So I got all this in my brain, and then my brain took over. And it's like, 4:30 in the morning, it's like I wake up and it's like, oh, I gotta go. It's, and then you start getting to be a habit. The brain starts taking over. That's when you get the momentum. Is when you I hate to use the word brainwash, but you brainwash yourself because you can actually see the results. You can see your vision, and you can smell it. And when you start adding all your senses, that's when you're going to make it.
Yeah, there's this subconscious programming that you need to do. And I don't think many people understand the unconscious mind or subconscious, but it's what it keeps us alive and keeps us safe, right? So it keeps us safe and keeps us alive. And that is why when you do it over and over again, it becomes a common thing. And your unconscious mind is like, okay, let's go. Because you've created this habit, and now that's a file you've created. So you're telling your mind, this is important to me. So it recognizes this is important to me. So then it wakes you up every single day at that time because it knows that's important to you, because its, job is to keep you alive and to keep you functioning the way that you desire to function, honestly. And I had a lady walk into a nail salon the other day when I was in there getting my nails done, and she was loud. I'm going to tell you that, first of all, she's loud, and I like to go to the nail salon to relax. But she comes in and she has a cane. And the lady asked her, why do you have a cane? Oh, I need to get knee surgery, but my surgeon won't do surgery until I lose 25 pounds. And I said, good for that surgeon. In my mind, I thought to myself, maybe surgeons today need to say, I can't do your knee surgery because it's not going to benefit you at all if you're not losing the weight. So it's so interesting that you had gone back, and talked with them after you had had the surgery, because so much disease in our body is created by us. Unconsciously, consciously, whether it's weight, whether it's other things that we, press down in our body. So The visual piece that you talked about is the number one way to design your life, Dan. That wouldn't you say? Like when you visualize and smell and see yourself crossing over that, then it becomes possible. And I think that's the piece. It's like that's the key to really serving yourself is, can you visually see it and believe it? And if you can't, it will never happen. Do you believe that, Dan?
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean that's anything if you can visualize it, you can receive it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that whole, you go back to the book, it was written in the 20s, I think, Think and Grow Rich.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not about growing rich, it's about visualizing what you want and keeping an eye on the vision. Because if you can see it and you tell yourself, because your words, they're spelling the spell. It's you're casting a spell when you tell yourself, I am grateful now that I have boom, or that I am boom. And when you do that, you visually and mentally program your brain for success. And
Yeah.
that's you got to do it. And it sounds like hocus pocus, like you were talking earlier, but it's not. We're a computer. We're walking around. We have
Mm-hmm.
a soul with a computer in it. And
So you want to avoid burnout. Someone listening is like, I'm listening to this because we talked about avoiding burnout and serving myself. And I'm assuming that's why you wrote the book. I'm assuming that's why clients come to you, that you're working with clients, and you walk them through this kind of 6-question system. I don't want you to give it away today if you don't want to, but I would love to know, what are some of those questions that our listeners need to be asking themselves right now to see if they're on their way already in burnout and they don't recognize it because they're not looking in the mirror. Other people are seeing it, but they don't see it themselves.
right. Well, when you hit, there's a certain point, there's a question you ask, and the same question asked two different ways. It's like, what else can I be doing? So if you're at work and you're going, what else can I be doing? Like, can I get this done? Can I get this done? Can I get this done? That's involved. You're engrossed. You're ensimmered in it. But if you're going, what else could I be doing? Like, I don't want to be here. And you have to be there. That's when you start getting that burnout starts getting on you, because you're like, I need to be at home. I need to do this. But I have to go to work because I'm responsible and I have to pay the bills. There's other ways out of it, but that's at one point where you reach. It's like that same question shifts from positive to, I don't want to be here anymore, but I have to. And that's when you start getting that burnout, because it builds and builds and builds. And then you start seeing all the negative things in your life, like your relationship, your body, your kids, all those things. You start seeing the negative consequences you getting from not being there at home.
Yeah, I
And
think the
that's a lot of
favorite,
it.
my most favorite conversations I get to have with my kids is when they come to me and say, I don't know if I'm at the right, I don't know if I'm at the right job. I'm starting to feel XYZ, and they want to start brainstorming ideas with me. Do I maybe need a different job? Or do I maybe need a different profession? Or maybe do I want to do my own thing, start my own business, especially when you're, you know, in a family where there's a lot of entrepreneurs. We're kind of split. Some have jobs, some are entrepreneurs. They start asking those questions because they know it's all possible. But then they start realizing, am I really happy here? And I think it's important to question happiness. I did what I had to do, like you talked about, Dan, and got up and went to work, and I found myself crying. I found myself numbing. I found myself doing all the things to just survive. That's burnout. That's
Oh yeah,
burnout, right? Yeah.
big time.
Yeah. And then it was like, I'm not happy. And I think we all have to go on a journey at some point in our lives to say, why am I not happy? And then identify, why are you not happy? Because, all of this started for me and who I am today, because one day somebody said, your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. You create everything around you. And I was like, I what? And then I thought about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I do. And it was almost like someone gave me a freedom card at that moment and was like, you get to create your life however you want to create it. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute here. I do? So asking yourself those questions, am I happy? Do I feel burnt out? Burnt out doesn't always look like 300 pounds. I wasn't 300 pounds. Burnt out always doesn't look like you're not taking care of yourself or medically your body's suffering. It could look a lot like my story where I was unhappy. I was crying a lot. I didn't, want to leave. I got sick a lot. It's almost like I was making myself sick. So then I had to take sick time and not show up to work. I couldn't fulfill what I needed to do because secretly I didn't want to go. So my body was like, that's important to you that you don't want to go. So we're creating scenarios for you not to go. Isn't that amazing how in control we are of all of that based on our thoughts? So tell us about the book. Why did you write Deliberate Evolution?
So when I went through this here and lost the weight and ran the Spartan race, that was right before COVID hit. And I thought, okay, great. I've lost 70 pounds. I did the Spartan race. Everything's be great. But then that's when I ran into the mental problems I've had. And you find that we all have trauma of some sort, whether it's mental or physical or whatever. And as a young child or a young adult, and then that sets the tone for a lot of our coping mechanisms and also our issues that we have dealing with other people. And that's what I didn't really realize, is because I always was a difficult person. Not really difficult, but I had no emotional regulation because of I was easily triggered. And then when I went through that, I was actually reading a book, Basil Vanderkolk, The Body Remembered, or The Body Keeps Score. And it triggered me back to 6 years old when I had sexual trauma and I had blocked it completely out. Well, it ended up being a chain reaction because after that, all of a sudden I ended up with a speech impediment, a coping mechanism of eating food. So I became like the baby Huey. And so I was like bullied through high school, all the way through high school, from elementary on. And that gave me a skewed look of the world and everybody else in it. So I was very triggered. But when I found that ground zero, I was able to fix that and go back and instead of looking as a injury, I could take the power it had into it and the empathy that I didn't have and find that empathy so I could have it for other people. And I was like, wow, I figured this out. And it's like, I had these goals to be a master chef, but then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I don't need to do that because that's for me. It's like, I need to tell other people about this because not everybody knows what happened to them or how to fix what happened to them, or even know that what happened to them is the problem. And the only way we can get to the next iteration of ourselves is through the self-awareness, figuring out what our values are and putting these all together in a thing to find your North Star. And it may not be the job you're at. And the one thing that we all have is we have a North Star that we have to find. And once we find it, we latch onto it and go. And that's what I've done. And I stopped being a country club chef. And the one thing that I do now is help people. And I wrote the book so that other people can move on with their life, because the next iteration of yourself, I mean, in midlife, it's like I stopped doing that after 30 years. And it's like, okay, I need to do this. And it's like, who does that? It's like, well, I have to do it. I get to do it. And that's what a lot of people don't see. It's like, is this hard? Yes, it's hard. Am I struggling to start a business and to get it? Yes. It's everybody who starts something new. There's that lonely period. There's that hard period. There's that trying to get your message straight. And that's what the book was all about. And now I use that to help people and actually define my message.
That's beautiful. And I think every single one of us out there need to define our lives. You've got one chance. here on earth, and what do you want that to look like? You have a purpose, a reason why you're here. Each one of us are extremely valuable. What is that purpose? What does that look like? And many of you might not know what that looks like today. And that is why we bring so many different experts onto this podcast, for them to give you the tools for you to be able to start looking at your life to say, am I burning out? How am I serving myself? And when you said I needed to say no, and I needed to get out there and start walking, and I needed to get out there and serve myself first, you didn't stop walking because your kids didn't want to join you. And I think, dads, it's a little bit of a different story depending if you're a single dad, probably not. But mothers, our innate natural response to a child is to nurture, because whether we carried that baby or not, it doesn't matter. We're women, and that's just innately to nurture. Men's innate DNA says, I need to provide for those children. So we tend to, as mothers or females, because whether you have children or not, you want to serve others. And generally, you'll put yourself on the back burner. And what we're saying today is recognize if you're going toward burnout. Are you unhappy? What's happening in your life right now? There's 6 questions that Dan puts you through for you to identify if that's where you're at. And you've got to serve yourself first. I'm going through a shadow book right now, doing a lot of therapy. I too have had a lot of sexual trauma in my childhood, Dan, and did not know about it till 3 months ago, when it was uncovered. And the therapist I was working with said, did you know? And I said, no, there's a reason why I don't remember hardly anything of my childhood. And I had disassociated it because your body protects you. Remember, we talked about that in the beginning. So your body says, no, we can't deal with this right now. We can't handle this right now. So we're going to forget about it. But the body kept score. And so my body was like, no, now's the time that we need to deal with this. So that's why I was having medical issues and I needed to deal with it. And here we are today, and it helps us understand ourselves better. But the 6 question system, did you create that because these are the 6 questions you really felt that you need to ask yourself, these key questions, and answer? And that was it for you? And you resounding had a yes and knew what you needed to do after that research for yourself?
Well, I'm still in a constant state of changing,
Evolving.
or transformation. If you start transforming properly,
Yeah.
you don't stop until your heart stops.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, a lot of people say, I'm going to retire. It's
Mm-mm.
like, are you going to retired? Is that what it is? You're tired, so you're going to retired again. So it's like, you're not tired. You don't have a North Star and a focus. And so these 6 steps is how to get from your point A to where you are, your pit, and to get to the peak. You have to have a journey. And that's my whole thing. It's like going to the mountain. It's like you have to be deliberate, because you can't fall up a mountain.
Yeah.
You don't. You can fall down a mountain. It's easy.
Yeah.
But to go up a mountain, you have to be deliberate. You have to, if it's a good mountain. And that's the whole thing. And evolution, the evolution part is you're evolving every single day into the next iteration, because now you understand this. Tomorrow, you're going to understand something new. Next year, and every year you do this. So these 6 steps, it starts with the core. You have to have a foundation to build on, because most of us don't have a foundation that was, we're not taught in school to make this foundation. We're taught to show up to work, be on time, do your homework, all this. But we're not taught, okay, this is what you need to build your life on. And that's your values and your core values, and your priorities. And if we start with that, then we can build on it every day and it won't crumble. A lot of us don't have that, or we haven't identified it. And that's where the book starts, is that identification of what really matters to you, not what your parents want, what your husband wants, what your wife wants, what your children, your boss, none of that matters. If you take care of yourself, and it's that people say that's selfish, it's not, because if you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. And that is, that's a big change in a lot of our lives, because we've been taking care of everybody else before ourselves, and we leave ourselves last, but we have nothing to give. We're just being like servants or whatever, or enablers, instead of having that core value, and the people see that in you, your children see that, your spouse sees that, your boss sees that you are whole and that you are aware of who you are, and you project that. You're very proud of who you are. And that's the hardest part, is to say, I'm proud of you in the mirror. A lot of us, but
can't serve from an empty cup.
Yes. And so, I mean, the whole thing goes through, and it's actually going through the mindset, and actually collaboration is one of the big things. It's one of the, almost the last step, is we're tribal animals, if you break it down. And we need other people. We need other people to breathe into us. We need other people to breathe into. We need people to tell us we're doing something wrong, and we need to be able to have the courage to say, I appreciate you telling me that. Yeah. And that's a lot of times when people tell us something, we're offended. And when we get offended, we put the walls up. When we put the walls up, yes, it keeps people out, but also keeps us from going out and being who we're supposed to be. So, and that last step is just, you got to take action. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's Wayne Gretzky, you know, and that is like, if you don't get up and do it, nobody's going to come tell you to do it. No, nobody's going to help you. No, it's up to you.
Yeah. It's important to have the mentors and the people and the community, and surrounding yourself with the right people at the right time for what your growth looks like. I always say, don't be the smartest person in the room. You know, if learning is beneath you, leadership is certainly beyond you. So keep learning. Go grab Dan's book. We have the link below at Deliberate Evolution. Dan, where else can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Dan Capello. I'm on Facebook, Dan Capello, and I have a website, dancapello.com. Right. And you can email me at dan@dancapello.com.
Nice. All right. Well, there is no shortage of how you can connect with Dan. So make sure you get out there and connect with him. He's coming to us out of Fort Worth, Texas today. So Dan, thank you so much again for coming and being a guest on today's show. It's really been great to be able to really talk deep about being serious about looking in the mirror at yourself and identifying for yourself if you are in or approaching burnout, and how serving yourself is always going to be the number one way for you to avoid that situation. So remember, everyone, you're the only you that's ever been. You're the only you that's ever been, and you're the only you that will ever be. And I say, how do you want to live this life? How do you want to design it? What do you want to do before the end of your day? Because we're all going to die eventually. I'm not going to retire, because you retire, you expire. I'm just not even interested in that at all. Like, at all. People ask us all the time because of our age if we're going to retire, and we just say, nope, we're just going to be doing the things we love forever. And that's what that looks like. So I can't really say timetables on what everything looks like and when things in my life are going to change, because I look back 10 years ago and I don't even recognize who I was or what I was doing then. I'm sure Dan looks back 10 years ago, doesn't recognize the shell of a person he was or what he was doing back then. But we just know, Dan and I both, deep in our hearts, that everything has happened to us exactly the way it needed to for us to get where we are today. And you have all the authority to give yourself permission to take control of your life, to avoid the burnout. And you've got to serve yourself. Start with you. Start with you. All right, Dan, thank you so much for being with us. To everyone today, thank you for being there with us today. Thank you for our sponsor, Paige Morlino Sells. And until next time, everyone, don't forget to be you and be strong. Bye-bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed our show today, as our guests shared their secrets on designing their life by taking the necessary leaps to expand their influence and attract the right people and clients into their lives. To start these easy steps for yourself, be sure to visit www.colleenbiggs.net/freebies to download the 7 ways to increase your exposure today.